always thought I was doing everything right. Work hard, save money, be responsible. That's what adults do, right? At least that's what I've been telling myself for the past decade while working 60-hour weeks at my accounting firm. My name is Arden Whitlow, 30 years old, single, and as of 2 weeks ago, a proud homeowner. When my grandmother passed away, she left me a modest inheritance. Not enough to change my life, but enough to put a significant dent in the cost of a home. I've been saving religiously since my first job at 22, living in a tiny studio apartment, packing lunches, and saying no to vacations my friends took without a second thought. While everyone else was posting Instagram photos from Bali or buying designer clothes, I was working overtime and putting every extra dollar into my savings account. So, when I finally had enough, $360,000 to be exact, I bought my dream apartment outright. No mortgage, no debt, just mine. It's a 2-bedroom place about 10 minutes from my office in a neighborhood that's not too fancy, but definitely on the rise. The previous owners had terrible taste in wallpaper and the kitchen needs updating, but I don't mind. I decided to do the renovations myself to save money. YouTube tutorials have become my evening entertainment. I was in the middle of scraping off that hideous floral wallpaper when my phone rang. It was my mom. "Arden dear, I need you to come over next Saturday for a family meeting," she said. Her voice having that fake casual tone she uses when she's up to something. "Family meeting? What's going on?" I asked, pausing my renovation work. "Oh, it's a surprise. Just make sure you're here by 4. And bring one of those chocolate cakes from that bakery near your new place." "Mom, seriously, what's this about?" I pressed, immediately suspicious. "Just a little family gathering. Your sister will be there with Nolan. And I've invited your aunts and uncles and cousins too." That raised my eyebrows. The whole extended family for a little gathering. "Mom, it's a secret, Arden." "Surprise. Just be here." And then she hung up. I shrugged and went back to my wallpaper. Whatever drama my mom was cooking up would have to wait. I had a home to fix. My sister Lisette is 3 years younger than me at 27 and has been dating Nolan Hale for about 4 years. They live in a rented apartment downtown. Unlike me, Lisette has always had an easier time of things. She was the cheerleader in high school while I was on the debate team. She dropped out of college to find herself, while I worked through my accounting degree. And somehow our parents never seemed to mind. Growing up, it was always Lisette this and Lisette that. When we were kids and both had dance recital on the same weekend, guess which one my parents attended? When we both graduated, my parents threw Lisette a massive party for finishing high school, while my college graduation got a dinner at a roadside Italian place. I still remember my 16th birthday when I got a used bike while Lisette got a car for her 16th the following year. When I asked my parents why, they said, "Lisette needs more help getting around to her social activities." As if my debate tournaments and library volunteering didn't count. But I've never been the type to make a scene. I just worked harder, saved more, and proved I could take care of myself. The week flew by as I continued working on my apartment. I managed to get all the wallpaper down and started priming the walls for painting. The sense of accomplishment I felt looking at my progress was worth every blister on my hands. When Saturday arrived, I woke up early to finish painting the living room before heading to my parents' house. I stopped by the bakery as requested and picked up a chocolate cake with buttercream frosting, my mom's favorite. As I drove to my childhood home, I wondered what this family meeting could possibly be about. My parents' house is a 2-story colonial-style home that my grandmother left to my sister and me when she passed. We let our parents continue living there, of course. It never even occurred to me to do otherwise. The house was filled with childhood memories, both good and bad. As I pulled into the driveway, I noticed several cars already parked. I recognized my Uncle Marlowe's truck and Aunt Sheridan's minivan. My cousin Calder's motorcycle was leaning against the garage. Whatever this was about, it was definitely a full family affair. I took a deep breath, grabbed the cake box and headed inside. "Arden's here," my mom called out as I walked through the door. She gave me a quick hug and took the cake from my hands. Perfect timing. "We're just about to sit down." I looked around the living room. Lisette and Nolan were sitting on the couch, hands intertwined, whispering to each other. My dad was talking with Uncle Marlowe in the corner. Aunt Sheridan and my cousins were already heading toward the dining room. "What's going on?" I asked Lisette as I approached. She smiled mysteriously. "You'll see." That didn't help my growing sense of unease. I followed everyone into the dining room where Mom had set the table with her good china, the set she only brings out for Thanksgiving and Christmas. Whatever this announcement was, it was clearly important. I took my seat next to Cousin Calder, who seemed just as confused as I was. "Do you know what this is about?" I whispered. He shook his head. "No clue. Your mom just called us all here for some big news." The food was passed around. Pot roast, mashed potatoes, green beans, and the cake I brought was placed at the center of the table for dessert. Everyone made small talk, carefully avoiding whatever elephant was in the room. Finally, after everyone had filled their plates, my mother stood up, tapping her glass with a spoon. "I want to thank you all for coming today," she said, beaming. "We have some wonderful news to share with you all." Mom stood at the head of the table, her smile stretching unnaturally wide as she looked at Lisette. "Our dear Lisette is pregnant," she announced. The room erupted in cheers and congratulations. Lisette blushed while Nolan put his arm around her shoulders. "And they're getting engaged," Mom continued. "Wedding plans will follow soon." I clapped along with everyone else, genuinely happy for my sister despite our complicated relationship. "Congratulations, Lisette," I said, smiling at her across the table. But Mom wasn't finished. She exchanged a look with Dad and Lisette, then turned to me with an expression that made my stomach drop. "That's not all," she said, her voice cutting through the chatter. "We have another announcement." The room quieted down. Everyone looked at Mom expectantly, including me. "As you all know, Arden recently bought herself an apartment," Mom said, gesturing toward me. The relatives nodded, some murmuring congratulations they hadn't bothered to offer when I'd first shared the news 2 weeks ago. "Arden is 30 years old and single," Mom continued. "No husband, no children, not even a boyfriend." I felt my face growing hot. What did my relationship status have to do with anything? Lisette, on the other hand, Mom went on, is about to start a family. She and Nolan need a place of their own, not some rental. My heart began pounding as I realized where this was going. Mom turned to me, her smile now sharp as a knife. "Arden, this is your chance to show how much you love your sister, how generous and kind you are. I think you should give your new apartment to Lisette and Nolan." Silence fell over the dining room. I stared at my mother in disbelief, waiting for the punchline to this horrible joke, but it never came. "You can go back to renting," Mom added casually, as if she wasn't asking me to give away my $360,000 apartment. "You don't need all that space just for yourself." I looked around the table. My father nodded in agreement with Mom. Lisette finally met my eyes, a mix of embarrassment and expectation on her face. "That's a wonderful idea," Aunt Sheridan chimed in. "Family should always come first." Several other relatives nodded in agreement. This wasn't a spontaneous suggestion. This was a planned ambush. "You're not serious," I finally managed to say. "Of course I am," Mom replied, her voice hardening. "Your sister needs it more than you do." I stood up slowly, my chair scraping against the floor. "Let me get this straight. You want me to give Lisette my apartment? The apartment I worked 60-hour weeks for years to afford. The apartment I just bought with money I inherited from Grandma and saved for 8 years. You want me to just hand it over because Lisette got pregnant?" "Arden," Dad cut in, his tone warning me to back down. "Don't be selfish." "Selfish?" I laughed, the sound hollow even to my own ears. "I worked for that apartment. Every single penny. No one helped me." "But Lisette needs," Mom started. "No," I interrupted. "Absolutely not. I will not give my apartment to Lisette. It's mine. I earned it." Lisette burst into tears, her hand dramatically pressed against her still flat stomach. Nolan glared at me as if I'd just kicked a puppy. How can you be so heartless? Mom demanded, her face flushing with anger. Your own sister. How can you ask me to give away everything I've worked for? Countered. Why doesn't Lisette work and save like I did? The relatives began whispering among themselves. I heard phrases like so materialistic, and always was the difficult one. You've always been like this, Mom spat. Always thinking only of yourself. I'm not giving her my apartment, I repeated firmly. End of discussion. What happened next still plays in my mind in slow motion. Mom grabbed the chocolate cake I brought, the one sitting untouched in the center of the table, and hurled it at me with surprising force. It hit me square in the face, cream and chocolate splattering across my cheeks and dripping down my neck onto my blouse. The room fell silent. I slowly wiped the frosting from my eyes, letting globs of cake fall to the floor. Dad and Lisette didn't look shocked or horrified. Instead, they seemed pleased, as if I'd finally gotten what I deserved. Without a word, I grabbed my purse and keys and walked out, cake still smeared across my clothes and hair. Behind me, I could hear the shouts beginning. Selfish brat. That was Mom's voice. We should disown you. Dad called after me. How could you do this to me? Lisette wailed. I got into my car, hands shaking so badly I could barely turn the key. Somehow, I managed to drive home, chocolate frosting drying on my skin. I collapsed onto my couch, the old second-hand one I'd brought from my rental, and tried to process what had just happened. My phone started buzzing almost immediately. Text messages and calls from my parents and Lisette flooded in. You're being ridiculous. Just give her the apartment. I can't believe how selfish you're being right now. After everything we've done for you. Your pregnant sister needs a home. I turned off my phone and tossed it aside. What had they ever done for me? All my life, I'd been second best to Lisette. When we were kids and both needed new clothes for school, Lisette got the brand names while I got whatever was on clearance. When we both applied to summer camps, my parents found the money for Lisette's art camp but told me the debate camp I wanted was too expensive. On Lisette's 16th birthday, they threw her a massive party with a professional DJ. On mine, Mom made a cake and invited 2 relatives. And now they expected me to give her my apartment. The one thing I'd achieved completely on my own. I thought about the house we were sitting in just an hour ago. My grandmother's house. The one she left to Lisette and me equally in her will. We'd let our parents live there out of kindness, never asking for anything in return. I was half owner of that house just as Lisette was. And suddenly, I knew exactly what I needed to do. The next morning I woke up with a plan. I searched through my filing cabinet until I found the folder labeled Grandma's Will. Inside was the document that confirmed what I already knew. Lisette and I each owned 50% of our parents' house. They were living there by our goodwill, not by legal right. I was about to call a lawyer when my phone pinged. It was a notification from Facebook. My mother had tagged me in a post. With a growing sense of dread, I opened the app and nearly dropped my phone when I saw what she'd written. It breaks my heart to share this, but sometimes family disappoints you in the worst ways. Yesterday, my daughter Arden refused to help her pregnant sister Lisette when she needed it most. Despite having the means to help, Arden chose selfishness over family. As a mother, I've never been more heartbroken. Please pray for Arden to find compassion in her heart. The post had dozens of comments, mostly from relatives and family friends. I was there. Arden was horrifically cruel to poor Lisette. Some people just don't understand what family means. Keeping an apartment all to herself when her sister is pregnant. Shameful. Not a single person mentioned how my mother had thrown a cake at my face. Not one person questioned why I should give up my apartment that I'd worked so hard for. I scrolled through the comments, each one like a knife to my chest. My mother was actively liking and responding to the most vicious ones. She was orchestrating a public shaming campaign against me. That was the moment something broke inside me. The last thread of familial loyalty snapped. I picked up my phone and called the first lawyer that came up when I searched for real estate attorney in Amberwick Heights, my new city. Blackwell Law Office, a receptionist answered. I need to speak with a lawyer about property rights, I said, my voice surprisingly steady. 2 hours later, I was sitting across from Jeremiah Blackwell, a sharp-eyed man in his 50s, who listened carefully as I explained my situation. Let me get this straight, he said when I finished. You and your sister inherited a house from your grandmother. You've allowed your parents to live there rent-free. Now, after they demanded you give your apartment to your sister and publicly humiliated you when you refused, you want to know your options regarding the house. Yes, I confirmed. I don't want to be vindictive, but they've shown me no respect or consideration. I need to know what my rights are. Jeremiah reviewed the will and nodded. It's clear-cut. You and your sister each own 50% of the property. You can at any time request that the house be sold and the proceeds split between you and your sister. What's the process? Yes. I'll draft a formal notice stating your intention to sell your half of the property. Your sister can either buy you out at fair market value or the entire house will need to be sold and the proceeds divided. Your parents legally have no say in the matter. I took a deep breath. Do it. For the next few days, I focused on my apartment renovations. I'd finished painting the living room and moved on to ripping out the old carpet. Physical labor helped keep my mind off the mess with my family. I blocked their numbers temporarily. I needed space to think clearly without their constant harassment. 5 days after my meeting with Jeremiah, my doorbell rang. I looked through the peephole to see my parents, Lisette, and Nolan standing in the hallway. I didn't open the door. Arden, we know you're in there, my mother shouted. Open this door right now. We need to talk about this ridiculous letter, my father added, his voice booming. I remained silent, pressing record on my phone's voice memo app. You ungrateful brat, my mother screamed. After everything we've done for you, you're trying to make your pregnant sister homeless, Lisette cried. This is low, even for you, Nolan added. I recorded every word, every threat, every insult they hurled at my door for nearly 15 minutes before they finally gave up and left. The next day, I sent the recording to Jeremiah, who called me immediately. This is harassment, he said firmly. We can file for a restraining order if necessary. But more importantly, their behavior only strengthens our position. They've clearly demonstrated hostility toward you. A week later, Jeremiah called with news. Your parents' lawyer reached out. They want to mediate. The mediation was set for the following Monday at Jeremiah's office. I arrived early, dressed in my most professional outfit, a slate gray pantsuit I usually reserved for major financial presentations. Jeremiah greeted me with a confident smile. Remember, you have every legal right to do this. Don't let them make you feel guilty. My parents, Lisette, and Nolan arrived with their lawyer. My mother glared at me with naked contempt. Traitor, she hissed as she passed me. The lawyer spoke first, laying out the facts of the case. My parents' lawyer argued that selling the house would cause undue hardship to my family. Jeremiah countered by presenting the recorded harassment and social media posts as evidence of their treatment of me. After nearly 2 hours of back and forth, the lawyers conferred privately before returning with a proposed settlement. The house would be sold and the proceeds divided equally between Lisette and me, as per our grandmother's will. My mother burst into tears when she heard this. Please, Arden, she sobbed, suddenly switching tactics. We're your family. How can you do this to us? I'm sorry about the cake. I lost my temper. I looked at her tear-streaked face, remembering all the times I'd forgiven her treatment of me, all the times I'd accepted being second best to Lisette. I thought about the public humiliation she'd orchestrated, the harassment at my door, the demands that I give up everything I'd worked for. The house will be sold, I said quietly. That's final. Jeremiah nodded and began drafting the settlement agreement. As we waited, I could feel my family's hatred radiating toward me. I didn't care anymore. For the first time in my life, I was standing up for myself. 2 months passed in a blur of legal paperwork and real estate viewings. The house sold faster than expected. The market was hot, and the property was in a desirable neighborhood. After closing costs and fees, Lisette and I each received just over $210,000. I never spoke directly to my family during this time. All communication went through our lawyers. I learned from Jeremiah that my parents were furious but ultimately powerless to stop the sale. They'd been living in a property they didn't own for years, contributing nothing toward its upkeep beyond basic maintenance. What are they going to do now? I asked Jeremiah during our final meeting. Your sister has decided to use her share as a down payment on a new house, he explained. Your parents will be moving in with her and Nolan. They've secured a mortgage for the remainder. I nodded, feeling a strange mix of emotions. Part of me felt guilty. I'd effectively forced my parents from their home. But another part, the part that remembered the cake in my face and the public shaming, felt vindicated. What about you? Jeremiah asked. Any plans for your share? Investment portfolio, I replied. I've been working with a financial advisor to set up a diversified mix of stocks, bonds, and real estate investment trusts. Smart move, he said approvingly. Well, unless there's anything else, I think our business is concluded. I shook his hand. Thank you for everything. As I walked out of Jeremiah's office, I felt lighter somehow, as if I'd set down a heavy load I'd been carrying for years. The weight of always being the responsible one, the one who gave in, the one who sacrificed. Back at my apartment, I surveyed what I'd accomplished. The renovation was nearly complete. I'd replaced the carpet with hardwood floors, painted every room, updated the kitchen with new appliances, and installed modern light fixtures throughout. It looked nothing like the place I'd bought 3 months ago. It was truly mine now in every sense. My phone rang. Friend from work. Hey, Celine, I answered. Arden, how are you doing? She sounded concerned. We'd talked briefly about the family drama when I'd shown up to work with red eyes after the cake incident. I'm okay. Actually, I realized as I said it, it was true. The house sale is final. The money's in my account. And your family. I sighed. That part's still a mess. I haven't spoken to any of them. I hear things through mutual friends, though. What kind of things? Lisette's wedding was last month. Small ceremony, just close family. Pause. I wasn't invited, obviously. I'm sorry, Arden. Don't be. I wouldn't have gone anyway. Meant it. She's due to give birth next week. Apparently a boy. And you're really okay with all of this? Not seeing your nephew? I thought about it for a moment. He'll grow up thinking I'm the villain in some family drama. They'll tell him his awful Aunt Arden wouldn't give them her apartment and made them sell their house. They won't mention how they treated me my entire life. Celine was quiet for a moment. Families are complicated. That's putting it mildly. I laughed without humor. The thing is, Celine, I don't think they ever really saw me as family. I was just useful, someone to sacrifice when needed. Do you think you'll ever reconcile? Not unless they acknowledge what they did and genuinely apologize. I knew it would never happen. My parents had spent their entire lives favoring Lisette. They wouldn't suddenly develop self-awareness in their 60s. After hanging up, I poured myself a glass of wine and walked out onto my small balcony. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. 6 months ago, if someone had told me I'd be estranged from my entire family, I might have been devastated. But now I felt strangely at peace. My phone pinged with a text from another mutual friend. Lisette had the baby. 7 pounds 6 ounces. Everyone's doing fine. I stared at the message, waiting for some emotional response. Sadness, anger, regret. But all I felt was a distant acknowledgement, like hearing news about an acquaintance rather than my own sister. I knew they were all living together now. Lisette, Nolan, the baby, and my parents, in the house they'd bought with Lisette's share of the money and a 30-year mortgage. They'd be paying for it well into their retirement years. But I couldn't find it in me to feel sorry for them. They'd shown me clearly where I stood in their eyes, not as a daughter or sister or aunt, but as a resource to be exploited. A purse, as I'd thought that day, with cake dripping down my face. My apartment was quiet as I moved back inside. Some might call it lonely, but I called it peaceful. The walls I painted myself, the floors I'd installed with my own hands. Every inch of this place represented my independence, my refusal to be used. On my bookshelf sat a small box containing the only family photos I'd kept, pictures of my grandmother and me. She'd always treated Lisette and me equally. Perhaps she'd seen what was happening, how my parents favored my sister, and tried in her own way to balance the scales by leaving us equal shares of her house. "Thank you, Grandma," I whispered, touching the box lightly. As for the rest of my family, I had no desire to reach out. The ball was firmly in their court, and I suspected it would stay there forever. I was done making sacrifices for people who wouldn't do the same for me. I'd always thought family was about unconditional love and support. Now I understood that real family, whether related by blood or not, would never ask you to set yourself on fire to keep them warm. They would never throw cake in your face when you refused to burn. My phone remained silent. No calls from my mother begging forgiveness. No texts from my father acknowledging his favoritism. No message from Lisette thanking me for the years I'd spent in her shadow, never complaining. And that was fine. I had my apartment, my investments, my career, and friends who actually cared about me. I had a life I built myself, brick by brick, dollar by dollar. And for the first time it was finally enough.